Hello, I'm Mike Montague, and this is Who Moves You, the podcast about real estate and the real estate market in Ontario, with an added focus on regions north of the Greater Toronto Area. This podcast is still pretty new. It began in January of this year, the motivation for it being that 2020 was a unique year for the real estate market in Ontario, and particularly for Barrie, Simcoe County, and much of central and south central Ontario. And in knowing that 2021 is proving to be an even more interesting year for the market, as we're seeing already just a few weeks in, there's definitely a need for information resources where people can get current information on real estate and from sources whose qualifications rest in their affiliation and their experience with what they're talking about. The goal is to offer information that isn't dramatically hyped up primarily to grab your attention, which is something I find increasingly rare in the highly competitive mainstream media and the growing spillover of that into the online world. Mortgage broker Arif Khan and myself have been doing a weekly TV show on Rogers TV called Hitting Home with Mike and Arif for 3 years now. But I wanted to have a podcast, something people could listen to in their car or on their phone while they're going about their day, where topics could each be covered and revisited with as much or as little time as required. So far, the response has been favorable. If I can keep the information fresh and current, then hopefully the audience will continue to grow with time. I haven't received any questions from listeners of the podcast so far, so I've stolen a question. More of a comment, really, sent in from a Hitting Home TV viewer. I can do that. Of course I can. It's my show. It's my podcast. So there. Okay then. This question is from Dave, and it was mailed in a couple months ago now. Dave has watched our show on Rogers TV, or maybe on the Facebook side, or maybe both if he's a dedicated viewer. Sorry for the delay in responding to you, Dave, but frankly, I probably needed some time to recover emotionally from your comments. Dave says, "Hello, I was watching some past episodes of your show on your Facebook page. I can't help notice you are always telling the public it's a good time to buy and sell. Sure it is if you're a real estate agent, of course. If your sign is on my lawn or you're helping me to buy, you're going to make money. Whether I do or don't doesn't matter, I guess, and I'll give you an example." Okay. In one of your shows from 2019, you said the market was busy and that it was a good time to sell. LOL. My house went up in price by more than $200,000 since then. If I had listened to your advice in 2019 and sold then, I would have lost $200,000. But I guess that's okay, so long as you collect your commissions. Okay, Dave. First, let me just say I'm happy for you that you're invested in our local real estate market and that you have accumulated equity in your home. You and anyone else who's owned a home in the region has watched their investments grow year over year by 20 to 30% in the last few years. I'm also happy that you took the time to watch the show, multiple episodes as it appears, and that doing so evidently inspired you enough to take the time to let me know you're watching. I'm genuinely touched by that. Being a community television host can be a lonely, thankless job at times, and it's nice to know that you're out there. I am somehow making a difference in your life, apparently, however great or minuscule that may be. If we had promotional hats or t-shirts, I would definitely be sending you one right now. Well, here's the thing, Dave. The only way Dave or anyone else who has been invested in our local market for the past few years were likely to lose money on real estate, or should I say forfeit future profits, as Dave is suggesting, is if they sold and then walked away from real estate altogether. If Dave sold his home in 2019 and he's been renting or perhaps camping in the woods ever since, then yes, he would have missed out on any future equity gains between 2019 and now on the property that he sold. The same holds true for anyone who could have bought an investment property 3 years ago, but then they chose not to buy. But the fact is, the majority of people who sell their primary residence will simultaneously purchase their next home. So in reality, if you are selling and buying in the same market time frame and in the same geographic location, and the price of homes then goes up 20 or 30% over the next 2 years, whatever the future equity is on the home you sold, you are likely earning from the home you bought and moved into at that time. If you choose to wait for values to go up before you sell, as Dave did, then yes, you will get more for your home today than in 2019, even more a year from now in all likelihood. And good on Dave for that. But Dave is also going to have to pay more for his next home now than he would have paid in 2019, or will have to pay next year, which will likely negate any, if not all, of the profits. The same mathematical reality applies to an investment property over time. That could be different if you are selling in one market region to move to another where prices are behaving differently, or if you are selling to buy in a higher or a lower price range, then you have to consider the variables involved. You also want to consider what future influences could be affecting the market you are searching to buy in. As an example, if I was considering investing in Toronto right now, I would be taking note that condo prices have been weak in comparison to detached homes in the Toronto area since the pandemic began. After the pandemic is over, my bet is demand for condos will return and values will strengthen. As another example, my wife and I plan to retire to her hometown of Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island at some point, as her parents and her brother and sister-in-law live there. Aside from that, it's just an amazing place to be. If you haven't been, I highly recommend an East Coast trip and a visit to PEI once the pandemic is behind us. Prices have been climbing at increasing rates on the island in the past few years, and although homes are less expensive to buy there than they are here presently, I suspect that whatever we were to buy, say 5 years from now, is going to cost us $200,000 or $300,000 more than if we bought now and held. The plan for us is to buy now, then rent the place out for the next few years. We could easily cover the carrying costs and pay down some of that mortgage through rental income. The right purchase could even leave us with $200 or $300 a month in surplus. When we decide it's time to pack it in here and move there, we will be much further ahead financially for having purchased now, sooner than waiting until we are ready to move. After 5 years, $70,000 or so will be paid down on the mortgage. Around $15,000 or more would be accumulated in monthly rent surplus. And best of all, if prices continue as they have for the past 2 years on the island, at least, well, a $400,000 house today will be worth half as much again, maybe even double that as we go on, maybe 5 years from now. With the income earned and the equity gained, we can easily put some of it towards redoing that home to our wants and needs when we do arrive. Or we may choose at that time to sell and then use the proceeds to buy another home, maybe even another home plus an investment property, or a cottage beside the ocean as well. Having hedged our future costs on buying, or we may even choose to keep that home as an ongoing investment and use some of that accumulated equity to buy a second place to live in ourselves. Investment real estate creates many options and many opportunities over time for those who do invest. You don't have to travel across the country to do this for yourself. Something I'm seeing more and more locally is people selling their Barrie homes now to buy in neighboring communities where the average prices are lower, like Orillia, Midland, Penetang, Parry Sound, etc. Others are buying homes north of Barrie now and renting them out with the intention of retiring there at a later date. It makes good economic sense, not just by getting in at today's lower prices, but in also having someone else willing to pay down the cost of your investment until you move in exchange for giving them a place to live. It's a win-win for sure. I anticipate that prices in areas to the north of Barrie are going to continue upward over the coming years as more people look to retire north of the GTA and as more people are able to work from home, as you're going to hear more and more about in the near future as high-speed satellite internet becomes the standard for rural and remote Ontario, allowing any of us, no matter how remote a location that we choose to live in and call home, they will have high-speed broadband internet service. That's going to be a game changer, I believe. If you are financially positioned to do so, perhaps now is the time to buy a place north of the city, take advantage of those lower prices, and carry it as a rental until you are ready to make your move. Ontario is peppered with inexpensive and serviceable tracts of land waiting for someone with the vision to create their dream home or weekend retreat as well. If you're listening from the GTA, you might consider buying that Barrie area home now with the plan to move there in the next few years. Barrie vacancy rates are low, so getting and keeping good tenants is pretty straightforward here. Everyone I have helped to buy an investment property over the years, be it in Barrie or in the surrounding areas, has been financially rewarded and is grateful that they did. There is no better hedge against inflation or rising home prices. I hope I was able to shed some light and perspective for Dave if he's listening, and for anyone else wondering about the time to buy or sell. What is the best time to buy or sell? To be clear, the best time to buy or to sell is now. That has held true in almost every year before, and it will still be true in years to come. Thanks for listening. By the way, if you go onto Facebook and type in Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, or just Hitting Home, you should be able to find the show's Facebook page, as my friend Dave was able to. Every week, Arif and I do a new 30-minute show episode, and we have had, and we will continue to have, some great guests on the show. Have a look and add yourself as a follower or subscriber, or whatever the appropriate term might be for Facebook. And while you're at it, you can subscribe to this podcast as well. I will be adding 1 or 2 new episodes each week to try and keep listeners current on the market and inject some insights and tips that I might have to share, with the hopes that when it comes time, when it's the right time for you to sell or purchase your next home or investment property, that you'll give me a call. Until next time, I'm Mike Montague. Who moves you?